The noise is always the first thing I notice. It's not just sound. At my brother David's house, it's a physical assault, a barrage of competing stimuli all vying for dominance. This Thanksgiving was no different. The television, a monstrous black rectangle that took up half the living room wall, was blaring a football game. In the kitchen, a smart speaker was pulsing out some frantic synthesized pop song. And above it all, holding court in the center of the chaos, were my grandniece and grandnephew. And then I told the board, Liam announced, his voice pitched to Carrie. He was holding a bottle of craft beer like a scepter. Our Q4 engagement strategy must pivot from passive consumption to active community building. We're not just selling a product, we're selling a lifestyle. Liam, at 26, is a walking billboard for modern, superficial success. His jeans, I know for a fact, cost more than my car's transmission. He works in marketing for a company called Viridian Dynamics, a company I know rather well. He is, I'll give him credit, sharp. He is also profoundly convinced that he is the smartest person in any room he enters. This is a dangerous, though common, affliction of youth. His sister Chloe was busy curating. She filmed her mother, my sister-in-law Sarah, basting the turkey. "Mom, can you look a little more stressed?" "Hat Thanksgiving chaos," Chloe narrated to her phone, a bright, artificial smile plastered on her face. "Just kidding, love you. But seriously, this bird is giving major main character energy." I had arrived precisely at 2 o'clock as requested. I carried my usual fabric tote bag, from which I produced a homemade apple pie and a potted chrysanthemum for Sarah. She kissed my cheek, her hands dusted with flour, and shouted for David to get me a drink. "No need, dear, I'm quite all right," I'd replied, my voice a quiet counterpoint to the din. I found a sturdy armchair in the corner, accepted a simple glass of water, and settled in to do what I do best: observe. I watched Liam pontificate on his innovative campaigns, his eyes flicking to Chloe for validation. I watched Chloe scan the room, her gaze constantly assessing content opportunities. And I watched my brother, David, visibly swell with a pride that was almost painful, hanging on his son's every empty buzzword. "That Viridian Dynamics, though," David said, slicing a piece of ham. "What a company. Heard on the news they just appointed a new CEO." I felt a familiar, quiet stillness settle over me. I took a sip of water. Liam scoffed, a sound of pure, unadulterated condescension. "Yeah, some mystery appointment. It's a total PR stunt. Nobody knows who it is. No name, no face. They're just calling them the architect internally. It's ridiculous." "Why?" asked Sarah, bustling past. "Because it's all cloak and dagger," Liam said, leaning forward as if imparting great wisdom. "We're a forward-facing, agile tech company. We need transparency. We need a brand. We don't need some shadowy boomer hiding in an office, probably trying to figure out how to send an email." "I heard they built their empire in secret," Chloe added, a flicker of genuine interest in her eyes. "Like, built a bunch of smaller companies, sold them for billions, and then just disappeared. Until now. Kind of a cool backstory, I guess." "Very guerrilla tech. It's antiquated," Liam pronounced, dismissing her. "Give me a CEO who's on Twitter, doing podcasts, building a personal brand. That's modern leadership. This new person, I give them 6 months before they run the place into the ground with their mysterious old-world nonsense." I had to suppress a smile. Antiquated. What a perfectly delightful word. I looked down into my water, watching the light refract on the glass. If only he knew. The inevitable moment of gentle conflict arrived with the clearing of the plates. Sarah was about to scrape a pile of vegetable peels and bread crusts into the bin. I naturally intervened. "Sarah, dear, don't throw those out," I said quietly, placing my hand on her arm. "The peels make a wonderful stock, and this leftover bread will be perfect for croutons." I reached into my tote bag. It's a source of endless amusement for my family. From it, I retrieved a small, neatly folded plastic bag, one I had washed and saved from a package of rice, and a twist tie. Liam and Chloe, sprawled on the sofa in a food coma, observed this transaction. I saw the look pass between them, that shared, youthful certainty of their own superiority. "Aunt Millie," Liam began, his voice dripping with false concern. "You know they sell vegetable stock in cartons now, right? You don't have to forage." "And breadcrumbs too," Chloe chimed in, actually lifting her phone to fill my plastic bag. "It's like $1 a box, life hack." I smiled and continued bagging the carrot tops and potato skins. It's not about the money, Chloe, it's about waste. Why buy something when you have the ingredients right here? I don't get it, Liam said, sitting up. He was on his favourite soapbox now, my hopeless, baffling, old-fashionedness. You spend all this time saving, 50 cents on stock? You clip coupons. I saw them in your bag like it's 1950. You drive that 26-year-old car. Don't you ever want to, live a little? Upgrade? They see thrift as a weakness, a sign of failure. They cannot comprehend that it is the ultimate expression of control. I live a very full life, Liam, thank you, I said evenly. But you don't get the modern world, Chloe pressed, her voice softening with pity, which I find far more insulting than scorn. You don't have an Instagram, you don't use Uber. It's just old-fashioned. It's sweet, but it's not how things work anymore. And how do things work, dear? I asked. I am always open to new data. It's about scale, Liam declared, as if he'd invented the concept. It's about efficiency. My time is worth more than the 50 cents I'd save making stock. I outsource the trivial. I focus on high-impact activities. That's the Viridian way. You're stuck in the micro, Aunt Millie. The world is built on the macro. I tied the twist tie with a neat, firm knot. The micro, as you call it, is where the macro begins, Liam. $1 billion company is just a collection of $1 bills. Managed well. Most people forget that. He actually rolled his eyes. See? This is what I'm talking about. You can't compare running a household budget to a multinational tech conglomerate. It's just not the same universe. Oh, my dear boy, I thought. It is not just the same universe. It is the exact same set of physical laws. Manage your assets, minimize your waste, and never ever believe your own hype. You think you're innovating. You're just repackaging basic principles in shinier boxes. You might be surprised, I said, placing the bag of peels by my tote. Aunt Millie, I love you, Chloe said, patting my arm. But my TikTok feed has better financial advice, no offence. None taken, dear. I watched them turn back to their screens, their faces glowing with that pale, artificial light. They saw a relic, a sweet, harmless, slightly embarrassing aunt who didn't get it. They saw my coupons and my old car as symbols of a life unlived. It has always been my greatest advantage. Let them see the harmless old woman. Let them underestimate me. The person no one sees coming is the only one who can't be stopped. I left as the pumpkin pie was being cut, offering the vague excuse of an early morning. David and Sarah, already distracted by a debate over which movie to stream, waved me off. The drive home was my favourite part of the day. My 1999 sedan, 26 years old, not 20 as Liam had guessed, hummed along contentedly. It's a simple machine, but I've maintained it fastidiously. I know every bolt, every wire. It has never failed me. My house is not a cluttered cottage. It's a modest, solid mid-century bungalow. I bought it with the payout from my first company, a logistics and inventory management software I coded in my garage. I sold it in 1995. I never saw the need to upgrade. Why? The roof doesn't leak, the foundation is sound, and the garden gets excellent morning sun. I stepped inside, and the silence of the house settled over me like a comfortable blanket. My home is my sanctuary. The walls are not for decoration. They are for storage. My books are my most valuable possession. My copy of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations sits comfortably next to a first edition text on neural network architecture. A guide to Japanese joinery leans against a dense treatise on quantum computing. I made myself a cup of peppermint tea from loose leaves I grow myself. I carried it into my study. My family has never been in this room. It contains a large oak desk, a comfortable leather chair, and a computer. It looks, to the untrained eye, as unassuming as I do. It is, however, one of the most powerful custom-built machines on the private market. I tapped the keyboard. 3 monitors awoke, not with pictures of kittens, but with a cascade of data. Market trackers, encrypted internal communiques, project timelines, global financial news feeds, algorithmically filtered for relevance. I sat down and typed my 24-character alphanumeric password, then pressed my thumb to the biometric scanner built flush into the desk. A secure portal opened. The minimalist, sharp logo for Viridian Dynamics filled the screen, then dissolved to reveal the executive dashboard. I am Mildred Hayes. And I am, as Liam so charmingly put it, the shadowy boomer who runs Viridian Dynamics. I am not the architect. That was a ridiculous name invented by the press. I built my first company. I sold it. I used that capital to fund a dozen others, quietly, preferring equity over fame. I guided them, nurtured them, and sold them when they were ripe. I built a reputation in the circles that matter, the ones who sign the checks, not the ones who write the articles, as a ghost. A strategist who wanted only results. Viridian was my passion project. I stepped away 5 years ago, but the board, seeing the company losing its innovative edge and growing fat on past successes, begged me to come back. My one condition: absolute anonymity. Fame is a liability. It makes you predictable. It makes you a target. I prefer to be an instrument. I opened a file, a routine audit of internal social media and forum activity. My eyes scanned the data, and then I found it. User Liam Hayes, marketing tier 3. Post: anyone else feeling the new leadership void? This architect ghost is probably some boomer who thinks synergy is a hot new startup. We're an agile company. We need an agile leader, not a mystery novel. Viridian Void old school. I read the post. Then I read it again. I felt a small, sharp pang. Not of anger, but of disappointment. He has a quick mind, my grandnephew, but it's an undisciplined one. He's reckless. He mistakes arrogance for confidence. He's so busy trying to build his brand that he's forgotten to build his character. This post was foolish, a minor breach of conduct, but it revealed a deeper, more dangerous flaw, a profound lack of judgment. I sipped my tea. The liquid was warm and clear. He was, as he would say, a micro-problem, a distraction. I closed the file. I opened a new secure document and began to draft the strategy for our new acquisition in the quantum encryption space. I, unlike my nephew, had macro-level work to do. For the next 2 weeks, I was fully immersed in my macro work. The board had approved my strategic pivot. It was, at its core, a simple philosophy: stop selling the sizzle and reinvest in the steak. Viridian had become bloated, obsessed with its own image. Its marketing budget was astronomical, pumped into lifestyle branding and influencer partnerships, Liam's entire division. Meanwhile, our core engineering and R&D divisions were being starved, forced to build on legacy code. My new directive was clear: a 40% cut to lifestyle marketing, with those funds reallocated directly to infrastructure and next-generation R&D. We would stop telling the world how innovative we were, and instead simply be innovative. I'm not a fool. I knew this would be unpopular, especially with the forward-facing crowd Liam so admired. I monitored the internal chatter. As I expected, his digital footprint was one of pure, unadulterated outrage. I didn't need to be in the room to see him. I could read his panic in the chat logs. This is madness. They're cutting the entire Q1 influencer campaign? That's our primary acquisition funnel. This new CEO is a dinosaur. They're going to run us off a cliff. Colleague 1. Heard it's to fund infrastructure. Yawn. Infrastructure doesn't get you on the cover of Wired. This architect is clueless. They don't understand the brand. I'm telling you, it's some 1990s boomer who thinks a firewall is a hot new tech. I found his assumptions amusing. I was the one who wrote the code for Viridian's original firewall. But Liam's frustration quickly festered from internal grumbling into public recklessness. He was, at his core, an arrogant boy who desperately needed to be seen as the smartest man in the room, and my new strategy had just told him quite explicitly that he was not. The flag from my legal team hit my secure inbox on a Tuesday morning. It wasn't a minor breach this time. Liam had been a panelist on a third-party webinar about the future of digital marketing. He was there representing Viridian Dynamics. After the panel, feeling self-important and fueled by his own indignation, he had posted on his public professional LinkedIn profile. He hadn't named me, of course. He wasn't that stupid. But he was stupid enough to do this. Liam Hayes, marketing strategist at Viridian Dynamics. Baffling to watch legacy leadership actively dismantle successful forward-facing brands. Some architects are just drawing blueprints for ruins. A refusal to engage with the modern world isn't a strategy, it's a surrender. A very sad day for innovation, tech, leadership, marketing. To make matters worse, he had replied to a comment on his own post with a single, sneering gif of a confused elderly woman trying to use a television remote. It was, in a word, catastrophic. The post had been up for 3 hours. In that time, it had been screenshotted and shared across the industry. A tech journalist had already tweeted, "Trouble in paradise at VDYN." Top marketing exec seems to be calling out the new architect CEO. Stock wobbling. My dashboard lit up. Legal, HR, public relations. From Arthur Harrison, VP Head of Marketing, to HR Legal M. Hayes subject urgent. Liam Hayes. This is an egregious, public and direct violation of Mr. Hayes' employment contract, NDA, and our code of conduct. He has publicly disparaged executive leadership and compromised our confidential strategic pivot. He has exposed the company to ridicule and financial risk. His access is being revoked as we speak. I have scheduled his exit interview for 3 p.m. This is a zero-tolerance issue. His termination is effective immediately. I read the email chain dispassionately. Mr. Harrison was correct. Liam's post was not just foolish, it was a betrayal. It was an act of profound disloyalty born from a bruised ego. He had used the platform my company gave him to attack the company itself. The termination was not just justified, it was necessary. I felt a cold, hard knot of disappointment. This was no longer a micro problem. Liam had, with a few taps on a screen, made himself a macro liability, and yet he was David's son, he was Sarah's boy, he was my family. I detest messy situations, I despise the intrusion of the personal into the professional, but here it was, a tangled, ugly knot on my desk. I could let him be fired. He deserved it. It would be a hard, sharp lesson in consequence, one he clearly needed. Or, I looked at the clock. It was 10:30 a.m. His exit interview was at 3 p.m. I closed the Viridian dashboard. I went into my kitchen. I found my apron. I took out the flour, butter, and sugar. If I was going to wade into this mess, I was going to do it on my own terms. I decided a simple, comforting tea cake was in order. An hour later, I was in my 1999 sedan, a still warm tea cake wrapped in foil on the passenger seat. The engine hummed its quiet, reliable tune. I drove under the speed limit. I find the steady, predictable rhythm of the road helps me think. Liam was arrogant, reckless, and had a critical lack of judgment, but he was not stupid. He was just unfinished. He was a product of an age that rewards a loud voice over a clear thought. He had mistaken his platform for permission. When I pulled up to David and Sarah's house, the contrast to Thanksgiving was stark. There was no music, no game on the television. The house was sunk in a thick, panicked silence. I used my key and let myself in. They were in the kitchen, the room lit by the harsh grey light of midday. Sarah was at the table, her face puffy from crying. David was pacing, his phone pressed to his ear, clearly on hold with someone. Chloe was slumped on a bar stool, pale and silent, her own phone discarded on the counter. And then there was Liam. He was sitting at the table, staring at the wall. He was still in his expensive quarter zip, but he looked as if he had aged a decade. He was white as a sheet, his eyes wide and vacant, with the hollow shock of a man who has just watched his entire future evaporate. "Oh, Millie," Sarah whispered, her voice cracking as she saw me. "It's awful. It's just awful." I placed the tea cake on the counter. "What is, dear?" "It's Liam," David snapped, hanging up his call with a frustrated sigh. "He's been fired! Just like that! An email! They locked him out of his accounts, no warning, nothing." I didn't do anything," Liam finally said, his voice a hoarse croak. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a raw, terrified defensiveness. I posted an opinion. A professional opinion. It's free speech. This new CEO, this ghost, they're a tyrant. They're ruining the company, and I'm being punished for pointing it out." "He was just trying to be a leader, Millie," Sarah sobbed, "and they're destroying his career for it." I looked at my grandnephew. He still didn't get it. He was still the victim. He still believed the fault lay with the world, not with himself. "What did the post say, Liam?" I asked, my voice calm. "It doesn't matter," he shot back. "It was vague. It was just industry talk." "I saw it," Chloe said quietly. We all looked at her. "He tagged Viridian, Liam, not in the post, but in his profile, and he used that gif, the one of the old lady." Liam flinched as if she had struck him. "This Harrison person," David said, rubbing his temples. "His boss. He won't even take my call. Liam's career is over. Viridian Dynamics will blacklist him. No one will hire him after this. All that work, all that money for his education." Sarah dissolved into fresh tears. David resumed pacing. Liam just stared, the reality of his own recklessness finally truly crashing down on him. I sat down at the table across from him. I placed my hands on the table. They are not the soft, manicured hands of his generation. They are hands that have built things, garden beds, engines, and empires. Perhaps, I said, my voice cutting cleanly through the panic, I can help. Liam's head snapped up. His expression was one of pure, baffled disbelief. Aunt Millie, he said, his voice laced with the last fumes of his condescension. No offence, but what could you possibly do? You don't understand this. This is a high-stakes corporate thing. You can't just clip a coupon for a new job. I see, I said. I met his terrified, arrogant eyes. Well, you are correct, Liam. This is not a coupon matter. I reached into my fabric tote bag. I pushed aside my coupon book. I bypassed my tin of mints. My hand found what it was looking for. It was not an old, sensible flip phone. It was a sleek, modern smartphone, a custom build with a hardened security shell. It was flat, black, and utterly anonymous. The entire family fell silent, watching me. They had never seen me with it. I unlocked it with a thumbprint. I opened my contacts. I scrolled to a name. Harrison A. I looked up at Liam, his face a mask of confusion. You're right, dear, I said as I pressed the call button. You don't call the Better Business Bureau. I put the phone on speaker for all to hear. You call the board. The phone speaker emitted a single tinny ring, then another. The sound was an intrusion, sharp and demanding in the grief-stricken quiet of the kitchen. Sarah's sobbing hitched. David froze mid-pace, his hand still rubbing his temple. Chloe's eyes were fixed on the black, unassuming device on the table, as if it were a bomb. And Liam, my grandnephew, looked like a man about to be sentenced. He was staring at the phone, his breathing shallow. On the third ring it connected. This is Harrison. The voice was clipped, stressed, and utterly professional. It was the voice of a man, my head of marketing, in the middle of putting out a 5-alarm fire. A fire, I might add, that was sitting right across from me. Liam's entire body flinched. His head snapped up, his eyes wide with a new specific terror. He knew that voice. Arthur, I said. My voice was calm, pleasant, but firm. It was not the voice of Aunt Millie, the baker of tea cakes. It was the voice of M. Hayes, the executive. It's Mildred Hayes. I trust I'm not catching you at a bad moment. The silence on the other end of the line was for a split second total. Then a sputtering. Miss Hayes? No, of course not. Not at all. I was just handling the internal matter. Yes, I said smoothly. The Liam Hayes matter. That is, in fact, why I'm calling. I watched my family. It was like watching a set of gears grind to a halt. David and Sarah's faces were masks of pure, unadulterated confusion. They had recognized the name Harrison. They heard the man's immediate stammering deference, and they heard my tone. They were trying to reconcile the woman who clips coupons with the woman who has the head of marketing at Viridian Dynamics jumping to attention. Liam, however, was past confusion. He had gone a shade of grey I had only ever seen in medical textbooks. He understood, on some primal level, that the universe was tilting on its axis. Miss Hayes, I can assure you it's being handled, Harrison said, regaining his professional footing. The termination is processed. It was an egregious public violation, completely indefensible. We are already drafting the internal memo and coordinating with PR on the external narrative to contain the fallout. A very thorough response, Arthur, as I would expect, I said. Liam squeezed his eyes shut. Sarah let out a small strangled whimper. However, I continued, I am calling to amend that response. You will rescind the termination. Immediately. The silence on the line was different this time. It was not deference. It was a cold, sharp shock. Miss Hayes, rescind? Harrison's voice was tight. With all due respect, the damage is already done. He publicly mocked executive leadership. He called you a dinosaur in all but name. To keep him on, it makes us look weak. It sets a terrible precedent. It sets the precedent I choose to set, Arthur, I said, my voice hardening just a fraction. He will not be terminated. He will be put on a formal 6-month probationary period. He will be stripped of all public-facing responsibilities and all team lead privileges. He will be reassigned to the internal metrics division, where he will spend his time analysing data, not creating brand narratives. He will also be required to attend a mandatory course in professional ethics and online conduct, which you will personally oversee.
I don't understand.
Harrison said, his bafflement clear. This is highly irregular, and if you'll forgive me, a very personal level of management for this employee. I looked directly at Liam. His eyes were open now, locked on mine. He was vibrating, a wire pulled too taut. Yes, Arthur, it has become a personal matter, I said. You see, I am currently at my brother's home and Liam Hayes is my grandnephew. I let that statement hang in the air. I heard Harrison's sharp intake of breath. I watched Chloe's hand fly to her mouth. But that, I continued, my voice perfectly level, is not the primary reason for this call. The reason you will do this is not because he is my nephew. It is because I am the CEO, and this is my decision. I believe in consequences, Arthur, but I also believe in reclamation. Firing him is easy, it solves the problem today. Re-educating him is hard. It makes him a better asset tomorrow. We are in the business of building things, not just demolishing them. Do you understand? Yes, Miss Hayes, of course, Harrison said, his voice now crisp, back on solid ground. He had his orders. But, Miss Hayes, how did you even... This was an internal... how are you? He was still grappling with the how. It was time. I kept my gaze locked on Liam. Arthur, I said, my full name is Mildred Hayes. I'm M. Hayes. I am also the shadowy boomer and dinosaur my grandnephew is so concerned about. I paused, letting the words land both in the phone and in the room. I am the anonymous CEO of Viridian Dynamics, and I believe this conversation falls squarely within my purview. The sound that came from my sister-in-law Sarah was a strangled gasp, like a drowning person's last breath. David simply stared, his mouth hanging open. Chloe's phone slipped from her hand and clattered loudly onto the tile floor. And Liam? Liam just stopped. His breathing, his vibrating, all of it. He just stopped. I will see to it immediately, Miss Hayes. Harrison stuttered, the full, blinding reality of the situation having clearly struck him. I'll call Liam's. I'll call him. No, you will not, I said. I will speak with him. You will email him the new terms of his probationary employment by 5 o'clock today. That will be all, Arthur. Thank you. Yes, Miss Hayes, of course. Goodbye, Miss Hayes. I pressed the end call button. I placed the phone screen down on the table. The silence that fell in the kitchen was heavier and more absolute than any I have ever experienced. It was a vacuum, sucking all the air and noise and panic out of the room. The clatter of Chloe's dropped phone seemed to echo. David, Sarah, and Chloe were all staring at me. Not as Aunt Millie. They were staring at me as if I had just unzipped my skin and revealed a completely different being. Liam hadn't moved. He hadn't blinked. He was a statue of pure crystalline shock. Aunt Millie? Liam whispered. His voice was cracked, unrecognizable. You're... Yes, Liam, I said. I folded my hands on the table. But the coupons, Sarah stammered. The car. You bake pies. I do, I said. I enjoy baking. And I see no reason to waste money on a new car when my current one is mechanically sound. And I see no reason to pay full price for canned tomatoes when a coupon offers a 20% discount. That is not poverty, Sarah. That is efficiency. I turned my full attention to Liam. The colour was slowly, painfully returning to his face, not as a healthy glow, but as a deep, burning red flush of humiliation. You are not fired, Liam, I said. He flinched, as if the words were a blow. You have, however, come perilously close, I continued. What you did was not just an opinion. It was an act of profound stupidity and disloyalty. You used your professional platform to attack your own company and its leadership, all because your ego was bruised. I didn't know it was you, he whispered, as if that were a defence. That is the entire point, Liam, I said, and my voice finally rose, sharp and clear as glass. You shouldn't need to know it was me. You shouldn't have posted it if it were anyone. You mocked your CEO. You did it publicly. You seem to be under the impression that your brand is more important than your character. You have it backward. I leaned forward. You and Chloe, you laugh at me. You laugh at my micro world. You mocked me at Thanksgiving for saving 50 cents on vegetable stock. Liam, I built a multi-billion-dollar corporation on that exact principle. It is called waste reduction. It is called asset management. It is called efficiency. I apply the same logic to a bag of potato peels as I do to a corporate budget. The scales are different, but the principle is identical. You, I said, pointing a finger at him, are an asset. A very expensive, well-educated, and until today, promising asset. But you are wasteful. You waste time on public posturing. You waste energy on ego. And today you wasted company trust. My new plan for you is an exercise in waste reduction. You will be removed from the shiny, wasteful world of brand, and you will be put in a quiet room where you will do nothing but hard, quantifiable, useful work. You will learn the micro roots of the macro world you claim to understand. I stood up. The family watched me, transfixed. You will receive an email from Mr. Harrison by 5 p.m., I said to Liam. I suggest you read it. And I suggest when you return to work tomorrow, you do so with a humility you have never once displayed in your entire life. Am I clear? Liam could only nod, his eyes brimming with tears of raw, unfiltered shame. I picked up my phone and my fabric tote bag. I walked to the counter and retrieved my tea cake. Sarah, dear, do put this in a container, I said, my voice back to its normal, gentle cadence. It will keep for 3 days. You all look like you could use some sugar. I walked to the door, placed my hand on the knob, and looked back at my stunned, silent family. I will see you all at Christmas. I closed my brother's front door behind me, the click of the latch sounding unnaturally loud. The silence I left behind in that kitchen was a tangible thing, a void where all their certainty and arrogance used to be. I walked to my car. The 1999 sedan started with a quiet, reliable turn of the key. The engine hummed, a familiar, steady sound, in a world I had just thoroughly destabilized. As I pulled away from the curb, I did not feel a sense of triumph. I am not a dramatic person. I do not orchestrate reveals for my own satisfaction. I am a problem solver. And Liam, my arrogant, reckless, brilliant in his own way grandnephew, had become a problem that threatened to self-destruct. What I had done in that kitchen was not an act of anger. It was a recalibration, a forced reboot. Sometimes a system is so corrupted by its own bad code that you cannot simply patch it. You must shut it down and restart it in safe mode. Liam was now in safe mode. My primary concern as I drove was the new imbalance. I had, for 62 years, cultivated a persona. Aunt Millie, the simple, frugal, harmless woman who bakes pies and clips coupons. It was an exceptionally useful disguise. It gave me peace. It gave me the freedom to move unnoticed. People, I have found, are very comfortable with archetypes they understand. The harmless, old-fashioned aunt is one of them. The billionaire tech CEO who runs her empire from a bungalow in sensible shoes is not. By solving one problem, I had created a new one. My family would no longer mock me. They would no longer pity me. They would be terrified of me. In its own way, that is just as blinding. Their condescension had been a shield. Their new awestruck fear would be a wall. It would make true connection, the simple, uncomplicated family micro-world that I genuinely enjoy, much more difficult. I sighed, a necessary casualty of the maneuver. I glanced at the tea cake sitting on my passenger seat. I'd have to deliver it another time. Perhaps I thought, I could send one via courier. The absurdity of the thought, a 10-figure CEO couriering a homemade cake, almost made me laugh. No, I would bring it myself, as I always would. The principles, as I told Liam, remain the same, regardless of scale. Arthur Harrison sent me an encrypted email the next morning. It was not, I noted from satisfaction, sent to my Executive M. Hayes address. He had found my private personal email, a smart man. Subject LH, day 1, open quote, Miss Hayes. He arrived at 8:52 a.m. He was subdued, dressed in a simple white shirt and trousers, no quarter zip. I met him at the lobby. I did not speak to him other than to say, this way. I believe the walk was instructive. We did not go to the 14th floor marketing wing with its bright colours, snack bars and collaboration zones. I took him to the sub-level. B-wing, where internal metrics is housed. It is, as you know, a very quiet, data-driven environment. He has been assigned a standard cubicle. His tasking, per your directive, is a full audit of all Q1, Q4 lifestyle marketing campaigns from the last 3 years, to be correlated against hard sales data, not brand lift or social engagement. I have given him access to the raw data terminals. He will be supervised by Dr. Aris, who, as you know, is thorough and entirely unimpressed by brand narratives. He said exactly 3 words to me. I understand. Thank you. He is at his desk now. He is working. AH, close quote. I closed the email. It was a good start. Dr. Aris, our chief data scientist, is a formidable woman who finds most of our marketing department to be, in her words, statistically irrelevant. She would be the perfect, dispassionate mentor. Liam was now in the engine room. He had spent his entire career on the brightly painted deck of the ship, telling everyone how fast it was going. Now he was in the bilge, counting the rivets, learning how the engine actually works. It would either be the making of him, or it would break him. I was, professionally, curious to see which. Personally, I hoped for the former. Brother David called me that evening. His voice was a strange, brittle thing I hardly recognized. Millie? Mildred, he stammered. Sarah and I, Millie, we are so sorry. Whatever for, David? I asked, pruning a rosebush in my garden, my phone tucked between my ear and shoulder. For everything. How the kids, we had no idea. A CEO Viridian. He said the name as if it were a holy incantation. David, I said, making a clean cut on a dead stem. You have nothing to be sorry for. You are my brother, and your son was being a fool. It is a family matter that required a professional solution. It is handled. Now, how is Sarah's garden? Did that fertilizer I recommended help with her azaleas? He tried, bless him, to talk about azaleas, but the wall was up. The simple, easy connection was gone, replaced by this new, trembling awe. It was exhausting. A few days later, Chloe came to my house. She didn't text. She just appeared on my doorstep alone. Her hair was pulled back. She wore no makeup. She was not holding her phone. It was the most authentic I had ever seen her. "Can I come in, Aunt Millie?" she asked, her voice small. "Of course, dear," I said. I made her peppermint tea from my garden leaves. She sat at my simple kitchen table, the one I'd had for 40 years, and just looked at her hands. "I can't stop thinking," she said finally, "about all of it. It's a lot to process, I'm sure," I said. She looked at me, her eyes sharp and for the first time truly intelligent. "Liam's an idiot. I mean, I love him, but he's an idiot. I get what he did wrong, but I don't get you." "What don't you get, Chloe?" "This," she said, gesturing around my kitchen, "the house, the car, the coupons." She lowered her voice. "I looked you up, or I tried. There's nothing, but I looked up Viridian, the anonymous architect. They're saying you're the numbers are." She trailed off, unable to even say it. And you're here," she whispered, "making tea in this house. Why? Why wouldn't you have a mansion, a private jet? Why would you ever clip a coupon?" I took a sip of my own tea. I had been waiting for this question. It was perhaps the most important one. "Chloe," I said, "what you and Liam value is visibility. You value the appearance of success, the followers, the brand, the lifestyle. You think being rich means spending money loudly." "I guess," she said. "I value something else," I said. "I value control, and I value privacy. The moment I buy a mansion, I am a target. I have a staff to manage, security to hire, journalists to avoid. The moment I fly on a private jet, my movements are tracked. Every luxury, every public display of wealth is a vulnerability. It is a chain." I leaned forward. "But when I am Aunt Millie, in her old car, arguing with a cashier at the grocery store over a 30-cent coupon, what do you see?" Chloe thought for a long moment. "A frugal old lady." "Exactly," I said. "Harmless, sweet, old-fashioned. No one ever suspects that the frugal old lady is the most powerful person in the room. It is the perfect camouflage. My simplicity is not a deprivation, Chloe. It is my greatest luxury. It is my freedom." Chloe stared at me, her mind visibly whirring, processing this new data. She was seeing the world through a new lens. Old-fashioned was not a weakness. It was a strategy. "That," she said, her voice filled with a new dawning respect that was far more real than her father's fear, "is the most macro-level thing I have ever heard." A small smile touched my lips. Perhaps there was hope for this generation yet. 6 months passed. The winter was long, quiet and productive. I restructured 3 divisions at Viridian, acquired 2 smaller firms specializing in machine learning, and read 47 books. On my family's front, things were still. The weekly phone calls with David were stilted. He and Sarah were walking on eggshells, treating me with a fragile, terrified reverence that I found deeply tiresome. Liam, I knew, was in the crucible. I received the reports from Dr. Aris. They were, like the woman herself, brief and without sentiment. Week 2. L. Hayes is resistant to standard data entry protocols. He keeps trying to strategize instead of analyze. I have corrected this. Week 8. L. Hayes is competent at data collation. His speed is improving. He still lacks patience. Week 16. L. Hayes has stopped offering unsolicited opinions on brand narrative. This is a significant improvement. He has begun asking relevant questions about statistical models. Week 23, L. Hayes submitted his first independent analysis. It was adequate. This adequate analysis was in fact quite good. But Dr. Aris is not a woman given to hyperbole. Then, one evening in early April, I received a non-scheduled email from her. It was 9 p.m. Subject anomaly L. Hayes. Open quote, Miss Hayes. Mr. Hayes has been working on the long-term retention audit you assigned him. He has been in the office for 72 straight hours, sleeping, I believe, in his cubicle. He has found something. Now, you are aware that for 5 years, our marketing division has attributed 40% of new client acquisition to our V-Life influencer campaign, his old project, with a 22% retention rate. Mr. Hayes has proven this correlation is false. The retention rate is in fact 2.3%. The initial acquisitions were bot farms activated by the influencer contracts to inflate their engagement metrics. He has the logs to prove it. Furthermore, he cross-referenced the 78% of our actual long-term high-value clients. He found the true acquisition point. It wasn't marketing at all. It was a series of technical white papers our R&D department published in 2019 and the subsequent positive discussions on 3 obscure high-level engineering forums. In short, Mr. Hayes has just proven that his entire former division was burning nearly $90 million a year to acquire automated accounts, while our real customers were acquired for free thanks to the micro-level work of our engineers. He is waiting in my office. He looks tired, but his data is clean. This is more than adequate. This is useful. Dr. Aris, close quote, I shut down my terminal. I looked out the window at my dark, quiet garden. I had sent my grandnephew into the bilge to count rivets, and he had come back with a map that showed exactly where the ship was leaking. He had stopped posturing. He had started analysing. I sent a one-word reply to Dr. Aris. Good. While Liam was in his data mine, Chloe was having a transformation of her own. Her TikTok and Instagram accounts went dark for a full month after our conversation. When she returned, she was, as Liam had been, a different person. Gone were the frantic hashtags, the pop music, the SpondCon sponsored content for teeth whitening strips and fast fashion. Her first new video was just her, in her apartment. No filter. Hey, everyone, she began, her voice quiet, hesitant. So, I used to post a lot about life hacks and the newest, shiniest things. And I've been thinking a lot about that, about value, like real lasting value. And I realized most of what I was promoting was just noise. It was just waste. She took a breath. I'm starting a new series. I'm calling it Built to Last. And we're not going to talk about trends. We're going to talk about things that endure, like how to buy one good coat instead of 10 cheap ones, or how to start a retirement fund, even if you only have $50, or how to make your own vegetable stock from scraps. She smiled, a small, genuine smile. It's inspired by someone very smart in my life, someone who taught me that old-fashioned isn't an insult, it's a strength. Anyway, I hope you stick around. Anyway, I watched the video on my own private tablet. Her analytics, I noted, were interesting. She lost 20,000 followers in the first week, but her engagement per viewer tripled. She had, as I'd done with Viridian, stopped chasing the sizzle and started building the steak. I invited them all for Sunday dinner, not a holiday, just a Sunday. They arrived at my house, not with the boisterous, chaotic energy of Thanksgiving, but with a quiet respect. David and Sarah were still nervous, but the terror had faded, replaced by a kind of tender curiosity. They brought a bottle of wine. Sarah came straight into my kitchen. Millie, what can I do? She asked, not as a polite offer, but as a genuine request. You can chop the carrots, dear, I said. And David, you can set the table. They did. It was simple. It was normal. Chloe arrived next. She put her phone in the bowl by the door. She was carrying a paper notebook. Aunt Millie, she said, I have an idea for a video on compound interest. I was wondering, could you look at my math? After dinner, Chloe, I smiled. Liam arrived last. He looked different, thinner, perhaps, but more solid. His eyes were clear. The frantic, arrogant energy was gone, replaced by a calm, steady presence. He was wearing a simple button-down shirt. He was holding a small potted orchid. Aunt Millie, he said, this is for you. It's lovely, Liam. Thank you. We worked in the kitchen for a while, the 4 of them hovering near me, watching as I made the gravy. My probation ends next week, Liam said quietly, speaking to my back. I'm aware, I replied, whisking a lump of flour. Dr. Aris submitted my report. The one on the ROI. I read it. I turned to look at him. It was thorough. The correlation you found between customer retention and high-density technical reviews was insightful. A flicker of pride in his eyes. The first I'd ever seen that was truly earned. Thank you. They offered me a permanent position in data science, reporting directly to Dr. Aris. An excellent choice, I said. It seems you found your macro, Liam. It was just in a much quieter room. He nodded, absorbing that. Then he took a deep breath. I also wanted to apologize, he said, his voice low. The others in the room stilled. Not for the post. I've sent you and Mr. Harrison enough apologies for that. I mean, for Thanksgiving, for the coupons, for all of it. I was an arrogant idiot. I didn't get it. I stopped whisking and looked at my grandnephew, really looked at him. And now? I asked. He looked around my simple kitchen, at the pots, at the peels on the counter. Now? I think I'm starting to. He paused. Can I help you with the stock? I smiled, a real warm smile. Of course, the bag of peels is right there. Later, we sat at my old oak table. The meal was simple. The conversation was real. David asked me about my first company. Sarah asked about my garden. Chloe and Liam argued, but this time they argued about data models and sustainable investing. At one point, Liam was helping me clear the plates. Aunt Millie, he said, so low only I could hear. The way you live, keeping it all a secret. I get it now. It's a firewall to protect what's important. Yes, Liam, I said. It is. My camouflage with them was gone. I had sacrificed my most useful disguise, but as I looked around the table, I realized what I had gained. My family no longer saw the harmless old aunt. And they had, thank goodness, stopped seeing the terrifying CEO. They were just seeing Mildred. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I think they were finally seeing me clearly. The garden was my primary focus again. The spring roses were coming in, and I was methodically pruning the dead wood from a particularly stubborn climber. It was a Saturday. I heard the sound of the side gate opening, a familiar, well-oiled click. In the back, dears, I called out, not needing to look. A moment later, Liam and Chloe walked across the lawn. The contrast to their Thanksgiving selves, now nearly 18 months in the past, was still striking. Liam was in a simple Henleyan jeans, but he carried himself with a quiet solidity. The frantic, peacocking energy was gone, replaced by a deep, settled calm. He was holding a tablet. Chloe, in a practical linen dress, looked like a young professional, not a social media caricature. She was carrying a leather-bound notebook. Her phone was, as was her new habit when visiting me, tucked away in her bag. "Hi, Aunt Millie," Chloe said, kissing my cheek. The new video on ethical sourcing just broke 1 million views. Of course it did, I said, snipping a branch. It was well researched. Your segment on supply chain auditing was particularly strong. That was Liam's part, Chloe said, nudging her brother. He built the data model for it. It was just pattern recognition, Aunt Millie, Liam said, though he couldn't hide a small, proud smile. He had been promoted at Viridian. Dr. Aris's latest review had just 2 words: exceeds expectations. For her, this was the equivalent of a marching band and a ticker tape parade. I have that new business proposal I mentioned, Chloe said, opening her notebook. She had spun her built-to-last brand into a full-fledged financial literacy company for young adults. It was, I'd noted from its corporate filings, already profitable. I'm looking to secure a second round of funding, but I'm wary of venture capital. They all want to scale fast and monetize the user base. I'm worried they'll dilute the core principles. As they will, I murmured. They'll want to add payday loan sponsors and credit card affiliate links. They will try to turn your stake into sizzle. Exactly, she said. So I was thinking of a different approach. A private investor. Someone who understands the long-term value of building a brand on trust, not hype. Someone who understands the macro of it all. She looked at me, her eyes clear and direct. It was a professional pitch. Before I could answer, Liam spoke up. And I have that data problem from the Viridian lab, Aunt Millie. The new quantum encryption stream is producing anomalous datasets. They're beautiful, but they're not logical. Dr. Aris thinks it's a hardware flaw. I think it's a new pattern we don't understand yet. It feels efficient in a way we just can't see. He held out his tablet, showing me rows of complex, elegant code. I know you wrote the original framework for that encryption. I was hoping you'd take a look. I sighed, a contented sound. I put down my shears and wiped my earthy hands on my apron. Here they were, my family, not asking for a handout, not mocking me for my coupons. One was asking for a complex data analysis. The other was pitching me a 7-figure investment deal. The wall of awe had crumbled. The shield of condescension was gone. In its place, we had built a bridge, a sturdy one built to last. "Chloe," I said, "your math on the proposal is sound, but your valuation is modest. Don't undervalue your own integrity. It's your single greatest asset. We will discuss terms over tea." I then turned to Liam and took his tablet. My eyes scanned the equations. A familiar thrill, the joy of a truly complex problem sparked in my mind. "It's not a flaw, Liam," I said, a smile touching my lips. "It's not a bug, it's a feature. You're right, it's a pattern, look." I pointed to a line of code. "The system isn't breaking, it's learning. Now fetch the tea from the kitchen. We have work to do." As they walked back to the house, I looked at the rose bush. I snipped one last perfect, vibrant red bloom and followed them inside. The work, as always, was just beginning.